Hey, what's up guys? It's Chuck from Brady Adventures, and today we're going to be walking through the installation of our Dissent off-road rear bumper. I hope you enjoy the video, and if you do, please give us a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell for alerts, and let us know if you have any questions about our Dissent off-road rear bumper installation or anything else we've got going on with our 100 Series Land Cruiser. First thing you need to do before you start this installation is orient yourself with the instructions. Dissent Off-Road has a PDF set of instructions on their website. We'll put the link in the description below, and it will orient you to the major muscle movements of the install. It lacks some of the detail, but you can find a lot of that detail in a thread on I Hate Mud that Dissent Off-Road set up to walk through the installation process. And then a lot of other people have posted on there little things, tips and tricks that they have done along the way. So it's a really, really good idea to read all the way through both of those and have them handy for your installation. It's a good idea to give yourself plenty of time for this installation. While it's pretty straightforward, we did run into a number of little issues along the way that I'll make sure I point out before each section. And if you do run into something and you're not quite sure what to do, it's a really, really good idea to give Ben at Dissent Off-Road a call. He's very responsive and he'll help you out with anything that you might run into. I also recommend posting any questions you have on the I Hate Mud thread. There's a lot of people out there and they respond really quickly. And of course, you can ask me any questions that you have along the way as well. You won't need anything beyond some basic tools and a torque wrench. It's good to have an array of 19 millimeter and 22 millimeter wrenches. I needed both of these for sure, and different size sockets. This one came in handy because it had a thinner wall and I could get them on those bottom nuts on the center bracket. But I would also recommend having a titanium step bit and a prick punch for a hole that you need to drill through the frame for the wing stiffener plates, and also good idea to have some rust remittance paint for where you have to drill and any other areas you might run into rust or scrapes or anything like that. You can see the bumper's already on, but I wanted to run down the different bolts in each location. Got some bolts mixed up. It's really easy to do and kind of takes a minute to sort things out. There's the little hardware checklist. Each wing is going to be mounted with a bracket inside mounted to the frame. There are 3 bolts that go through the wing into that bracket. These 3 on each side are 1/2 by 13 by 1 1/4 inch bolts. The 3 bolts that go into the frame on the outside of the wing here are all M14-1.5 by 35 millimeter. They're going to use these larger washers. And then there's another one inside here going into the frame that is mounting the support bracket to the frame. Then there is a long 3.5 inch bolt right here. There's only 2 3.5 inch bolts and it's a 1/2 inch. Then as we move to the center here, we have 2 M12 by 1 3/4 inch bolts that are going to go into capture nuts inside the rear cross member. Then there's 2 through bolts that are 1/2 13 by 4 inches. So these 2 are going to go through this, through the bumper, through the 2 spacers, and with that back plate. These 2 on top and these 2 on the bottom are also 1/2 inch 13 by 1 1/4 inch bolts. The first thing I'm going to have to install are these brackets. The main wings of the bumper bolt to these brackets and the frame, and this is going to mount directly on the frame back here. Each bracket is going to mount to the frame through this existing capture nut, and then a 1/2 inch hole that you're going to drill further back here that's going to use a through bolt. That through bolt will come through this hole on the other side, and this hole's a little smaller than a 1/2 inch, so I'm going to have to enlarge that with a step bit. One thing that complicates this on the passenger side is the rear exhaust. I'm not really sure how involved it is on a stock exhaust. This is a Doug Thorley exhaust, and it's fairly new, so I'm going to have to drop these brackets. And then I have one bolt, which I just soaked in PB Blaster. It's a little rusty, but it's only a few months old, so I think it's going to come off pretty easily, and then I can drop this pipe and step up this hole. I was able to get all the hangers off, and there was actually one loose fitting up here which allowed me to get this exhaust just out of the way enough to do my drilling. I'm going to go ahead and step this hole up just mark this and try to get it lined up perfectly so that it's in the right position. I've heard that you don't have to get it super accurate, but essentially in the instructions it shows a center line here and here. So go ahead and loosely mount the bracket to mark the general area too, and try to get it as close as I can. Alright, I've got my step bit here. I like to put a little tape on there. I mean, that's a little overkill because really, let's see, only really got one step to go. Alright, so that hole's done. Prick punch. My dad taught me to use one of these to sort of get a little spot for your bit to sit in. Now I got a little mark there I can sit my pilot in, kind of close to the body. Probably should have switched over to this earlier. Those holes are lined up pretty nicely through there. I'm just gonna get this honed out a little bit. I think that's pretty darn good. Time to do the other side. Had this paint, it came with my Monster Liner when I did my drawers, and I've never used it, so I figured I'd go ahead and try that on the some of the spots that I need to paint from the cross member being welded on and where I'm drilling out. The bracket's going to go right up in there, so it's recommended on all these capture nuts that you put in some anti-seize, because these can certainly seize up in the frame and you can bust the capture nut, and that's a terrible thing to happen. Now on this side, I'm going to put the 3.5-inch bolt through the hole that I drilled and also through the one that I enlarged. I'm going to keep all these nuts and bolts just hand tight until I get everything put together, and then I can position it all and tighten it up. Before you put the bumper wings on and start to fit some of the bolts for that, it's a good idea to check the clearance of each of the capture nuts on the frame. The box steel of the frame itself, in some cases, will slightly cover the edge of those capture nuts and not allow your bolt to thread properly. So check that threading ahead of time, and then you can do the work to grind out just a little bit of the frame so that you can get those bolts in before you get everything up on the truck. My bolts that are holding the wings into the frame, 5 of the 6 went in just fine, and this last one isn't quite catching the threads. And you can see this plate in here, which is actually part of the frame, not part of the bumper, is slightly shifted this way, and it's blocking the threads a tiny bit, so I can't get my M14 bolt up in there. I am going to take a grinding wheel and grind this metal down a little bit just so that bolt has a cleaner entry. When you slide the bumper up on here, the instructions say that you're going to need to trim some of this sheet metal that's right up against the rear tire, because that bumper fits up right in here like this. I'm not going to trim that until I've actually seen the bumper slide up on here and I can get an idea of how much I need to remove, if any. Let's have the bumper loosely attached right now, and you can see where this piece of body panel is going to hit this when I get everything tightened down. So that's the piece you need to just cut a little bit off. Tried using some pliers just to bend it out. Tried it on this side, on the passenger side, and just kind of bent that up, and I think that's going to work well. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on the driver's side now too. Okay. Well, I wish you could have seen the other side. This one I ended up marring up quite a bit more than the other side, and you can see how that double wall panel split. So I don't know, just hit some paint on that to make sure no rust sets in right there. Before we put the side of the bumper up on the vehicle, we need to put these ball studs in the bumper, because once it's up on here, getting in there is going to be a little more challenging than it is right now. So we'll go ahead and slap these on. It's a 13mm ball stud. These spacers are not required on some models. In the instructions, it mentions newer models after '03. Some of them have an integrated tow hitch. You know, I don't think mine's any different than the older one, so I think I'm actually going to need to use these. So at this point in the installation, I'm going to tape this one here to hold it into place. Then the 2 pieces of bumper will go over the top of it. We'll run 2 bolts into these capture nuts and 2 through bolts to the back. And in the back of the frame here, there are just some large open holes, so this will serve as a supporting piece on the back side. So these 2 will sandwich the cross member with the 2 pieces of bumper and the hitch in the center. Painter's tape on this bracket, get it positioned over the holes as best as I can. Okay, so now I'm going to get the pieces of bumper on here and then bolt it together. Each side of the bumper is going to use 6 bolts on the side, 3 that mount to the bracket and 3 that mount to the frame. Have all these ready to go. 3 that mount to the bracket, and I have nuts and washers to go with those. And then the 3 that are going in the capture nuts on the frame, I'm going to go ahead and put some anti-seize on these threads. We got one more bracket bolt right here. Now I know this hole is my hand hole. I've got these frame bolts to get in. Now I want to go back in, but I'm going to go way out this time, and then what is this? Is it the pinchy thing on this one? These big fat welds down here are keeping the bumper from going on, so I'm going to have to file those down a little bit. Had to grind down these welds a lot from this new cross member. My dad would call them snot welds, but we finally got it where this thing slides up on here, and it looks like everything is going to fit just right. So now we are going to take this little bracket here, and this is going to go behind this, like this. And it's going to sandwich this like that. So there's a couple more bolts that we're going to drop in from the top here. And we're going to sandwich in that bracket. The through bolts come through right here. I've got my spacer plate that goes right over that. And now I've got to fit my Dissent bracket. I'm going to go ahead and get a washer and a nut on here and these through bolts. So then there's a bolt right here that goes through this way just because of the clearance, because you can't get the bolt out the other way. So now I have everything done. The bumper's fully mounted. All the bolts are still loose, so I'm going to get everything positioned exactly like I want it. So I'm going to start by tightening these in the frame when I get the wings positioned perfectly. And then I will do the hitch going from bottom to the top, starting with these, and then these, and these. And then when I'm all done with that, then I'll do these final ones from the reinforcing bracket in here and tighten that guy down. When it comes to the torque specs on these, all of these 22 millimeter M14 bolts on the inside and here and here and here should be torqued to 95 foot-pounds. I torqued these as tight as I could, or the half-inch bolt, but they're just sandwiching the steel together, so it's not a big deal. But you do have to be careful with these two through bolts. I over-torqued these and actually bent the plate on the back. I was pretty sad about that. Everything is still structurally sound, but it actually pulled the spacer and the bracket into my cross member and compressed it a little bit. So be careful and don't over torque these. All of these half-inch bolts that had nuts on the other side, I use Loctite on all of those just to make sure they stay good to go. I'm just going to use my wrench here just to get them snugged up, but not super tight. So we're going to start off with these down here and work our way up and keep everything centered. Start at the bottom. These are hard to get to. Just snugging them up, okay? I'm not going to get a socket. Oh, that one's a little easier. I'm just getting them snug, and then I'm going to come back and torque them afterwards. So the new bumper is on, the base bumper, no swing out, and so let's see where we're sitting. We were at like, I think 21 5/8, and now we're at 21 1/4. So we dropped between 1/4 and 3/8 of an inch with the weight of the bumper.
But how low does it go when you sit on it?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Or when we put the swing outs, it's probably going to go down, you know, another 1/4 of an inch, I bet. So we definitely are going to need some new springs. Hey guys, so the base bumper is finally installed. Finished product right there. Still need to do the wiring and get the lights installed and then get my swing outs on. You'll see that in some upcoming videos. Definitely ran into a few things with this installation, so hopefully you learn from the things that I discovered and some of the mistakes that I made. And at the end of the day, this thing is super sturdy. I'm very pleased with it. It looks great. The departure angle is impressive, and it is just a wonderful addition to the cruiser. So if you enjoyed our video, please give us a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell for alerts. Let us know if you have any questions about our Dissent off-road rear bumper or anything else we got going on. And thanks a lot for watching. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing to our channel. And always feel free to leave us any comments or questions that you might have.